This summer, I learned that you could make a sunflower go from this to this, and here's how it works.
So in this video, we're going to take a look at how to change the sunflower stalks from a flower into baking flour, and some ways you can use the leaves and petals too. Step one was, of course, finding some sunflowers. We don't have sunflowers of our own, so we were really blessed by some friends that allowed us to pick some of theirs. Sunflowers have been prized for centuries for all the benefits they have, both as a food and an herb. There's also nothing quite like seeing the sunshiny cheer they bring to the landscape, and my family and I learned that walking through a field of that sunshine can be pretty amazing as well. Once you have your sunflowers in sight, it's time to pick. When picking sunflowers, make sure to bring a good strong pair of clippers because the stalks are really tough. Cut the sunflowers all the way at the base and try to pick ones that have nice large stalks. Once you have your sunflowers, you need to prep the plants, starting by cleaning off all the leaves. Simply pull all of the leaves off, making sure to set aside all the nicest leaves if you're wanting to dry them for tea. Cut off the flower heads, leaving about a foot of stalk on the head. These I'm going to hang up to dry so that I can harvest the seeds and all their goodness too. Cut the stalk into manageable lengths, about a foot long seems to be good. You can do this using cutters or a really sharp knife. Very carefully slice each piece of stalk lengthwise in half. Make sure you have a nice sharp knife to use and are really careful so that the only thing you cut is the stalk. Now, using a spoon, scoop out the white foamy part inside the stem. I tried multiple tools for this, and a spoon was what worked best for me. You have to work it a little, and some were harder to get than others. With the large mammoth varieties, I definitely got more white out per plant, but they were also a lot tougher to handle than the small varieties were. Set the chunks on a cookie sheet and discard the empty stalks. Preheat the oven to 170 degrees and slide your filled trays in for about 2 hours. The time needed to dry them can vary based on the size of the chunks, so I just check them periodically, setting the oven for half-an-hour increments to make sure I keep an eye on them. You want them to have a nice crisp snap to them with no moist, spongy feeling left to them. Allow the pieces to cool completely before grinding them into flour. To grind the dried sunflower stalks, thankfully you don't need any fancy tools. I simply place them in batches in a small coffee grinder and grind them until they're powder. You may have to run it a few times to get it really well ground, but thankfully it works great. This is a coffee grinder that I use specifically to grind herbs or eggshells for toothpaste or flowers. I don't recommend using one that's usually used for coffee though, or your flour may taste like that instead. Once it's ground, it's ready to use. You can store it in the freezer in a Ziploc bag to keep it nice and fresh. To use it, I exchange it cup for cup in grain-free baked goods, and everything we have made with it's been a hit. Most grain-free recipes combine multiple types of flour, so I just choose one flour to swap it out with, and I've had really great success with it. It has a slightly sweet nutty flavor, which adds a really tasty element to baked goods, including these ginger, pear, and dark chocolate scones. Now let's take a quick peek at the leaves and petals. The leaves can be added to salads and have been used to help detox the body, support liver health, and have been valued for the way they support lung health and help to expel congestion. This made them sound like the perfect addition to a cup of tea. To dry them, I simply sort out the good ones, snap off the stems, and place them on cookie sheets, making sure not to pile them up too much, and place them in my oven set to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. These dry for about 40 minutes, but I like to check them starting at about 30 minutes as you don't want them to burn. They are finished when they're crisp without signs of moisture. Ideally, you would dry herbs in a dehydrator, as lower heat tends to keep more of the beneficial properties of the herbs. If you don't have a dehydrator though, the oven seems to work great, and thankfully all the herbs that I have dried in the oven still seem to retain their amazing flavors. Once they are dry, allow them to cool completely and then crush them into a jar and store them in a cool, dry place, or enjoy a cup of tea right away. The flavor of sunflower leaves is kind of a mellow, soft flavor that you can enjoy by itself or add other herbs to it to enhance the flavor or the benefits that you're desiring. Here I'm adding red clover flowers and mullein to make a tea to give my lungs a little bit of a healthy boost. The petals on these sunflowers were mostly past being able to use, but I was able to save a few of them, which I dried for tea. You can also mix the petals in with salads though, and I'm hoping to try them next summer to make mini wraps for chicken salad. They have many nutrients, including vitamin A, and make such a pretty addition to a meal or cup of tea. Finally, we cannot forget the seeds. I'm going to hang these up to dry until they're ready to harvest. The seeds have to be completely dried out, but once they're ready, I can use them for things such as sunflower butter, seed flour, munch on them as snacks, or even share them with the birds. To dry them, you simply hang them upside down until the petals are gone, the heads are drooping, and the seeds fall out fairly easily when rubbed on. You want to be able to catch the seeds, as sometimes they will start to fall out as they dry. You can wrap the heads in mesh, which will catch the seeds while still allowing good airflow. To hang my flowers on, I actually rigged up this large drying rack and hung them with plenty of space in between for airflow. I then attached this old bottom sheet around the base of the rack to create a basket for catching the seeds, and as you can see, it's already working great. So while this was just a peek at some of the delectable ways sunflowers can be used, I hope it showed you that there's a whole lot more to these sunny flowers than the beauty that meets the eye. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe.